Hello there.
Hello there, and welcome back to the Sky Guys podcast. We are here wrapping up season one of Skeleton Crew. Very fun show. We have a lot of interesting stuff to discuss today in our season recap. I'm your host, Mike Phillips. With us here, as always, the man's voice of the narration, Pete Consadori is here. Pete, how are you?
Doing well. Excited to talk to you guys about the show and see what your thoughts are, the final thoughts.
Yeah. The final thoughts, hopefully for now, hopefully not forever, but we'll see. Also with us here today, our pirate captain, Nick Fraietta, is here. Nick, how are you?
Doing great. We're finished with the season. I think I mentioned last time that's 10 shows slash seasons together. It's a podcast. It's a lot of fun.
Yep, it is a lot of fun here. And also with us here today, he is the last couple of shows usurped the Mike Brescia spot for the season recap. Recovery Room Nick is here. Nick D, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me back. I always love talking about Star Wars, especially when it's good Star Wars. So yeah.
Yeah. Brescia missed out, Nick Fraietta. He missed a good show.
He's watching, but I don't think he finished. I don't know. But are you standing up, Nick?
Yes. I bought a desk that does both sitting and
Nice,
standing.
nice. That's
Yeah.
great. That's
He,
great.
he's done this. He's doing the standing desk thing.
Yeah, that's great.
Yep. All right. So Pete wants subscribers on the podcast. They can do so Apple Podcasts, Google Play, TuneIn, Spotify, Amazon, all usual suspects. Simply search for the Sky Guys favorite podcast platforms. You can follow episodes there. And we are now into the Skeleton Crew finishing up here. We have a fun off-season plan for the next, like February is basically off-season month here for us. So make sure you subscribe to get off us before we start getting into preseason Andor mode.
Yeah, subscribe as always. Always say it every week. Totally free. Don't gotta pay for it. Who doesn't like free?
Yep. Because and Nick Fraietta, how can you follow us on social media?
You can follow at Sky Guys Podcast pretty much anywhere. And you can email us at skyguyspod@gmail.com.
Yep, and that includes Blue Sky now. We did get Blue Sky set up.
Oh yeah, thank you for that. We have Blue Sky and we were out of TikTok for about 12 to I don't know, 18 hours maximum. So and that's back.
Yeah, well, I mean, the TikTok ban is
At least for
basically
now.
the TikTok ban is basically the Grandpa Simpson meme.
Yeah. At least for now. We'll see what happens in I believe it's going to be April now.
Yeah, so we have 3 months to worry about it. And to go to our social media comment of the week here. This is from TikTok. This is our discussion about the show being better in a binge. So let's go to TikTok here. This is a comment from Bearded Toy Guys. Interesting idea, Nick D. He says all these Disney Plus shows should drop the first episode on regular ABC at the same time as the app. All the normies can get the first hit for free and get more exposure and word of mouth. I know, obviously, network schedules kind of prohibit this kind of idea, but not a terrible strategy if you're trying to get more eyeballs on Disney Plus content.
Yeah. I mean, the more places you put it out, the more people that'll get to see it, and I guess the show kind of suffered that people didn't really want to watch it. So if you threw it out there for more people to see, it probably would have helped.
Pete, what do you think about this? Somebody's more tapped in on the TV side of things. I don't think it's a work on the ABC schedule, but I think it's an idea they could consider, like if they are more invested in the Disney Plus side of things.
Yeah, I think in the future for better advertised shows, right? I mean, I don't know if people are stopping what they're doing to watch this live. I think this show helped when you can watch it right?
Yep.
Granted, they can go to Disney Plus and watch it if they missed it, if there was interest there, but I don't know if putting something like Skeleton Crew on regular TV, even if it's first episode, considering there wasn't much hype about it, would have made the most sense. But if there is another Disney Plus show out there that is going to be um, marketed well, advertised well, I say why not? It's one episode. You put it in a lack of a better term, a BS slot that's not being taken, and you rock from there.
Yeah, that's for sure here. And Nick Frey, was up to promote your Star Wars podcast day is coming up soon.
It is, correct me if I'm wrong, February 7th.
Yep, February 7th here. And just so everybody knows, this is the fifth annual Star Wars podcast day. And it's on February 7th because this was the day 25 years ago, 26 years ago now, that Jedi Talk, the very first Star Wars podcast, premiered back in 1999. So it's a celebration of all Star Wars podcasts on Star Wars Podcast Day.
A lot of great creators out there. They work hard at what they do. We do the same. We work hard, and a good day for everyone to just be grateful for what this community has built. Not just what we do, what they do, just So what Star Wars has done, just be grateful for everything.
And Nick D, we do have a fun episode planned for Star Wars Podcast Day. It's coming out in 2 weeks, not next episode, the week afterwards.
What's the plan for that one?
You'll be surprised. You'll find out at the end of next week's episode.
I thought I was gonna get a scoop today, but okay.
You could off the air, but not on the air.
Okay.
The audience will find out. We'll find out next week. And P, I believe you announced you wanted to make about the YouTube situation.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't call it a situation. It's more so some news for us. So normally you'd get your Sky Guys podcast content on Mike Phillips on YouTube, right? Just at Mike Phillips.
Yeah.
So what we've done is moving forward from this episode on, we have our own Sky Guys podcast YouTube channel. So make sure you subscribe there. Everything will be going over to that. I believe as we kind of are in this in between, Mike, we're going to post on the Mike Phillips as well as the Sky Guys podcast YouTube. But starting Andor season 2, you will find all of our podcasts, video version exclusive to the Sky Guys podcast YouTube. So make sure you check that out. Like we said, there's going to be some growing pains, right? We're gonna still post on both channels for the time being, but once Andor season 2 comes out, that'll be exclusively on the Sky Guys podcast YouTube.
That is correct.
Yeah, you can get us in a lot of places now. We opened up YouTube, Facebook, TikTok's back. We're back on. We were off Threads for a while. We're back there, so a lot of places you can find us.
Yeah, and we have our own email, as Nick mentioned here. So if you want to email us any thoughts on Sky Guys podcasts, I'll do that. Plus, leave your feedback and star rate. Help us get even better. So, if you're on the pod, you like it, leave a 5-star review. Let us know how we're doing. If not, just let us know the way we can get better.
Just don't roast us too much. We're sensitive, hurts our feelings.
All right, so it does hurt our feelings. And Nick Fraietta, I believe we have a little bit of Star Wars news here.
Oh yeah, we do. According to the Bespin Bulletin, Sigourney Weaver. Did I get that right?
Yep, you got it right.
All right. Character in The Mandalorian and Grogu is a colonel of the New Republic and only appears in a few scenes of the movie.
Pete, thoughts on this? Because it feels like this is a big missed opportunity. They made a whole big deal about Sigourney Weaver being in the movie.
I wouldn't call it missed opportunity. I would call it utilization of character maybe is not the greatest, but we don't know what that character is like, right? This character may not have an incredibly big role. And sometimes we're not the biggest fans of cameos for cameo's sake when it comes to, and when I say cameo, what I mean is the casting of, well-known actors and actresses that have never been in Star Wars. Sometimes that doesn't work well. So we'll see how the character is. If it's a great character and we only get a couple scenes of the character, I'm going to be upset because we want that character to be in more scenes. If the character just has this kind of secondary or tertiary role, then it may work very well.
Yeah,
you know what? A few scenes might be more than you think. A few could mean like 4, and that's actually not bad.
Yeah, I think Nick D. The one thing I'll say here is I don't know if you've been following some of the rumors lately around this movie and what the plot could be here. My concern level is starting to rise a little bit in terms of the quality of this movie.
I actually haven't really been following. I kind of want to stay as blind as possible going in. So yeah, whatever your concerns are, I don't know if I want to know because I don't want to be concerned for this. But yeah, I mean, what Nick's saying, a few scenes in a movie. I mean, actors have won, best supporting actor for 4 or 5 scenes in a movie. So, I don't think the amount that she's in it doesn't necessarily reflect on that, but we'll see.
All right, Nick, what else we got?
The next piece of news is that this show, Skeleton Crew, was certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, 91% approval rating on the tomato meter.
Very good.
Very good. And it's
phenomenal.
It's true too.
Yeah.
I think it's rightfully earned.
Yeah. I looked at the popcorn meter too. It's high in the popcorn meter too from the audience score.
Yeah, it is. I think everyone who's seen I've never heard anyone say they didn't like the show.
I've
seen it, so they like it. The problem is that not all people have seen it.
I think I've heard people say it's not for me, but it's good. I've heard that. I've not heard anybody say this show's terrible.
Yeah, agreed.
It's 8% of the tomato on the popcorn meter, which is a very high audience number.
That's good. Yeah, there's one more piece of news, not really news. I'm going to say it anyway. There's rumors floating around that Natalie Portman might be in Ahsoka season two, that's more or less been debunked. I don't think that's going to be happening.
Yeah, there's no shot, no way in hell they would get Natalie
No.
Portman for like a cameo scene here.
They got her. They did get her to come back to the Thor world,
Yeah,
but something tells me she's not coming back to the galaxy far, far away.
yeah, I did. Pete, there's no shot that we ever see Natalie Portman in Star Wars again.
I mean, never say never.
Yeah.
You know, I I can't see where she fits in other than flashbacks and stuff, obviously, but I mean, it's a high possibility for anyone, right? I mean, it depends on what they're feeling. If they feel like it's a money thing, if they feel like it's a just a feeling thing, if they don't want to do Star Wars anymore, I mean, it could happen. So I'm gonna hit him with the Justin Bieber and say never.
All right, is that it on the news department, Nick?
That is it.
All right, let's go ahead and get to what we're talking about here today, our Skeleton Crew season one review. And the three of us aired our thoughts on the season last week. We were very high on it. So, Nick D, you finished the journey with us here. You were like, what were your take on this season as a whole?
I thought it was great. I thought it was fun. I thought it was, lighthearted. It didn't take itself too seriously. It had its moments where there was like I think any good like kids show, because everyone's calling it a kids show, which it is, but every good kids show has like something for the adults watching, like, and I feel like Skeleton Crew had that. It had those more intense moments. I think Jude Law, perfect casting for this. I think he chewed up the scenery when he was there. That having like an actually established good actor take on that role, he was able to convey a lot of emotion and a lot of, which we'll like we'll get into. But overall, yeah, no, I thought it was great. I thought it was fun, and I wish more people watched it because it's like you almost have to kind of defend it. You have to be like, wait, no, no, but this one's good though, guys. Like, check this one out. Um, but yeah, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, Pete, I do feel like for what they had to work with here, and like we were very concerned at the show from the get-go. I mean, we heard the whole thing last year about the end of 2023, how it was pushing back a full calendar year because there's rumors there were a bunch of reshoots in here, but whatever they did behind the scenes clearly worked because it gave us a much better product we were expecting.
100%. And I think this show benefited a lot from not really having a backstory to follow. Obviously, you have to follow canon to make sure you're not breaking anything, but it seemed like the creative freedom um, was there, and I think that they thrived with it. I think once people have this expectation of, well, it's Ahsoka, so you have to make sure it's a perfect adaptation of Rebels or a perfect continuation, or oh, this is Book of Boba Fett, so you got to make sure Boba Fett's the same badass. I mean, we talked about it endlessly about these shows that have characters in them that we know and love. So I think that this benefited a lot from that. And the rewrites were probably good ones. They probably saw what was happening with Disney Plus shows, and they said, "Look, we can't keep pushing out the same kind of content, or we can't keep doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result." And they pivoted, and it worked in their favor. I mean, I don't know what the show looked like prior to these reshoots or the rumored reshoots, but the product we got was phenomenal.
Yeah, Nick Fraietta, I do think the reshoots definitely helped, and like I think it's something we'll talk about more when we get to like comparing where this went right to the Acolyte went wrong. Like I think it was very clear they had a plan here. Like we're gonna tell a great story, it's done, and if we get more, great. But if not, we told what we needed to tell, and that's it. I think that really benefited the show is that like you got like what you needed to know out of it, and you didn't like, get left like hanging with wasted episodes or like random plot threads you're never going to see again. They did enough stuff here to get you a satisfying ending.
Um, they did, and if I just got much louder, it's because I realized my microphone's on the other side of the room,
Yeah.
and so I put that in front of my face here. But something I thought about that I think this show really benefited from was the fact that you keep hearing that people say, and I agree, that we want Star Wars to go away from the Skywalker saga.
Yeah.
And this show was like the perfect happy medium where it was its own thing, and you really was really separated from the rest of the galaxy, but it was also still part of the main saga in that we know it takes place at the same time as Mandalorian and Grogu. There's one or two people from Mando who show up, not really though, like the Pirate Vein and the Hutt. And this might be the perfect happy medium where you're not really involved in the universe because like what happens in this show? maybe will impact what happens in the Mandalorian eventual team up movie that Filoni's directing. Probably not though. But even if it doesn't, you're far enough away from the rest of the galaxy that this little story does feel unique and original.
Yeah, it does help because Nick D, I mean, to Nick's point, I feel like in terms of connecting to like the story going forward here, I mean, maybe Mando visits Atten at some point in the future. Maybe these kids like pop up for a scene or there, but like it's a story that can exist on its own without needing the Mandalorian or Ahsoka
Exactly.
or 75 Rebels characters to make it interesting.
Yeah, and I honestly I think that's where Disney Star Wars era kind of thrives in that like it's in the same universe, but it's its own story, not connected to anything. I feel like when they try to extend the canon or change some things around in the past, that's where they start getting into trouble. But having a story just in the universe, separated from everything, open-ended enough that it could tie back later on if you needed to, but it doesn't have to. That's like I think that's where they thrive, and I think this show shows that.
Yeah, and Pete, this is like something we can play about in the past. You do not need homework to watch Skeleton. You can watch it and enjoy it for what it is.
100%.
All right, so let's now go ahead into some more stuff here. One of the big things we're curious about with the show is like obviously the four child actors who are the stars of the show here, and really is their show. We were fed a lot of Jude Law in the promo materials, but like it really was these kids driving the story here. And Pete, like I know we know how maligned child actors can be in some shows. We know Star Wars not done great with younger characters in the past, like Ezra and Ahsoka early on were hated by the audiences. The fact the show got these four kids pretty much right to the point that the audience got them immediately was like on board with them, I think is a big success for this show.
I agree. I think that can happen with any character, regardless if it's a kid actor or an adult. I think they just did a great job in making you buy into the characters and their story in general, whether it's Jod, whether it's the kids. And I just think that's one of the high points of the show is not just the story, but how they kind of grab your attention and how you want to be on someone's team, like automatically. So it was very well done.
Nick D, what do you think about these kids we got in this show?
Yeah, I think they did a really good job. Sometimes like you watch shows with kids and they're not handling situations like they're children. They're not like handling kids' problems. And I think the show was really just like it felt like a group of kids like got in way over their heads and were just like, we need to get figure out how to get home now. Like it didn't ever feel like it didn't ever feel like they were trying to be too adult or they were trying to like have too many things for something. Like they were just kids that all had their own unique personalities. And it did a really good job. Like in the beginning, they all butted heads and they all kind of, fought. And then throughout the season, you learn each one of their things that make them tick, that make them work. And then finally at the end, it all came together and they worked it out and they've had their strengths. Like you see throughout the show what their strengths are in the end. They come together and fix it. And like I thought it was great. That's a good way to write children in a show.
Yeah, Nick Frey. We also making the Stranger Things comparison a lot with this show, and like if they want to follow the storyline of these four kids, they definitely have the interest of the audience to check the show out to want to know more about them and what their journeys as they grow up.
They do, and I've said it a couple times. You guys know what I'm going to say. It's they found kids that aren't annoying. And I don't mean that all kids are annoying. I just mean like usually when we get one of these shows, now Stranger Things obviously an exception, which is why it's so popular and hit the ground running so well. Usually these shows, the kids are annoying at first. You don't want anything to do with them, and as time goes on, they grow on you, and then you like them. That happened with Rebels. It happened with Clone Wars, with Ezra and Ahsoka. It happens countless other times, and they didn't do that. I liked these kids from 10 minutes into the show. I was like, oh, these kids aren't bad. I want to know more about them. And right away they had me interested, and I think that plays a huge role. If we had to wait until episode 5 or 6 to start liking the kids, it would not have hit the same.
Yeah, I agree with that here. Anything else you guys want to add on the kids before we go on to John?
Neil's the best.
Neil, breakout star of the show.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm surprised that like there were not more like Neil plushies and merch in the Disney store around Christmas because like Neil was like, very fun.
I wonder. I'm not surprised because no one was watching it. But are there? Do they have like the plushies and style that they do? And they have the um, what is it called? The Funko.
Yeah, and there's one Lego set of this show. They have the Onyx Cinder as a set with all the kids and Jod.
I think I'll vote now that the next prize for any draft or whatever is a Neil Funko.
So the Andor draft, the prize will be the Neil Funko Pop.
I know it doesn't make sense. It should be something from Andor, but that's what I vote. Let me know if you agree or disagree.
I think that'll be a fun idea. And I think let's get to Jod here because obviously we had this whole storyline where like we find he's the pirate beginning of the thing. He's reading the raid. He gets one credit, gets mutinied by his crew. Bruce takes over, thrown in jail. Runs with these kids, finds his way out. And I do think they did a lot of fun stuff with him, Nick Fraietta, where like at the beginning of his arc, they basically tell you like, don't trust this guy. He's not worried. But we've been so trained by Star Wars over the years. Oh, grow a heart and he'll bond with these kids. And they kind of tease you with that a little bit in episode 4, when the one that Nick D actually came on and recap when he saves them on the Akron, that planet, and then at the end, they're like, surprise, he's actually just morally ambiguous and driven by money. So I thought that was a fun way to handle his character, and basically the twist was there was no twist.
It's very fun because there was no twist, but I've said this before. He wasn't the Bowser, he was the Wario. He
Yep.
wasn't all bad. He did have a good side to him. You could see he didn't want to hurt anyone. I actually believe him when he said that. But he's also not a good guy by any means. And you could see he did touch the kids in some way. The way Wim yells out to him as they're going down the elevator shows that their time together did leave a little mark on those kids. And maybe that means they don't see the end of it, or they're just leaving it somewhat open ended in case they want to do a season two. I would say as of now, the plan is there is not going to be a season two, but we will see. I know we have that as a discussion point later. We will talk more in detail on that in a few minutes here, but I think he did leave his mark on these kids, but at the same time, he was probably the main villain of the show.
Yeah, Pete, you agree?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think Jude Law plays a phenomenal role. I mean, Nick D said it earlier. I think he does phenomenal in this role. And I agree with Nick F that, they leave it open ended. He's definitely important to the kids, like he had mentioned. So I think that the character is a lot more than just the bad guy, which I like.
Yeah.
He's Wario.
Yeah. No, it's a great comparison.
Yeah, I'm going to share here. Entertainment Weekly did a great interview with John Watts and Christopher Ford, the two showrunners for this show. They asked him, they've got Jod here. Entertainment Weekly asks and says here, you're surprising how dark Jod got in these last 2 episodes. I kept waiting for the redemption arc to come in with him in the finale. Kind of like Han Solo swooping at the last second to help Luke destroy the Death Star. And never did he goes for global subjugation instead. Because remember in the finale, Jod basically wants to enslave all that and to work for him. Tell you about turning the guy some of us kind of assumed would end up a hero by the end to a villain. John Watts says it was really exciting following people get to the same conclusion you got to on Reddit. Everyone's waiting for that redemption arc, and Ford would always say, he's not their parents. So we got that waiting, and you get a little bit nervous. You're like, should we give him a redemption arc? But I don't know. Then Christopher Ford says, we knew that character archetype was part of Star Wars, so we wanted to play with it, especially the whole, is he a Jedi or not thing? Is he good or bad? So our twist is this anti-twist. It's exactly as he presented to be, seemingly. So, Nick D, what do you think about what the showrunners have to say about this?
Yeah, I mean, I everybody's trying to figure out like what's Jod's deal? Is he a good guy? Is he a bad guy? And everybody in the show is literally telling you this guy's not a good guy, but you're seeing him interact with these kids and he's like really good with them initially. So you're kind of like, how could a guy who's that good with kids be the villain? And I mean, everybody said it, everybody called it, to the point where that owl lady, I can't remember her name yet, like there was a point where I was like, maybe she's the bad one, like maybe she's got it wrong. But I think the kids did have a little bit of an impact on him because like he really I what Nick was saying, I really believe he didn't want to hurt anybody. Like I don't think he wanted to when he shoots at
Burn?
what yeah, like obviously he's not trying to hit her, he misses on purpose. And when KB's ship was going down and he's looking out the window and he's like, do you see this didn't have to be this way, he actually seemed upset, like he didn't want that to happen. So I think I think it was cool the way that they wrote him because yes, he was the villain of the show, but he wasn't your typical villain. Like he was complex. He like wanted he wasn't there just to like burn everything down. He sees his opportunities, and in this moment, he was like, I could take over this planet, you know. But yeah,
Nick Frey, any reaction to what we heard from the creators?
Not really. It doesn't really change my thoughts on anything. It's just a mystery character, and I appreciate that.
Yeah. I do think it's a lot of fun, Pete, seeing the Jod stuff play out here, especially like as you said, the twist was there was no twist. I think that's a welcome development for Star Wars, where they go way too hard sometimes to make the perfect redemption story.
Yeah, but they executed it so well to the point where we were all looking for it. I think they kind of leveraged the shows of past and how Disney Star Wars fans have been just kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Just kind of brainwashed into thinking there's going to be this huge turn within the last couple episodes. Yeah, no, I think it was a great move by them. I think it keeps it pretty simple, and I think the simplicity of the show makes it good. You don't have to worry about all these random story arcs you have to write in a specific way. You can just write a complete story.
Yeah, I mean, to Pete's point, Nick, do you feel like there was a version of this storyline where, like Jod as a last day change of heart, he saves the kids, next thing you know, like he's like babysitting them after school. But they chose not to go. I think it's better for the story.
yeah. Not only did they choose not to do that, they went full on like Jod shoots a dude in the head like at point blank range. Like they really went like if you think Jod's a good guy, like
Nope.
I'm going to show you I'm not. You know, like yeah, they and again and it moments like that impact you too because like as an audience watching it, you're like, this is going to be the good guy. He's going to save them. He's going to swoop in, and like, no, he never does. Like he saves them when it's convenient for him, but he doesn't like care that much, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Nick Fraietta, I mean, it feels like Jod, like he likes the kids. He doesn't want to see them get harmed, but like at the end of the day, like if he's choosing the kids in the credits, he's always taking the credits 10 times out of 10.
Right, which I think he's made, like you said earlier, the twist was there was no twist. He made that clear, I think, from the beginning. You just thought you thought as time went on the kids would grow on him, and and I guess they might have, but it didn't change his morals.
Yeah. He's baked. He's who he is at this point.
Right.
Yeah, and speaking of the Jedi back story we heard from, which the writers got into a little bit here. Nick, did you like how they handled it? Where it's just a line from Jedi supposed to go into flashback mode?
Yeah, I think that was fine because I think it could have been easy for them to be like, let's show you the flashback, and then here's three or four cameos, and then the person that trained him. Like the story didn't need any of that. You know, if there's a season two and they want to maybe go a little bit more deeper into it, fine. But I don't think this story needed to have Jod's backstory. I think it benefited from Jod being kind of ambiguous and not really you not really knowing everything. So I think they handled that fine.
Yeah, they talked about this also in the Entertainment Weekly article. I was going to go back to it real quick. This is the question here is Jod finally shares his backstory here as a kid, was saved by a Jedi, trained a bit, and then Order 66 came around. Are there any other details that backstory you came up with, like say the Jedi who saved him? I didn't make it on screen to the episode. How deep did you go? Ford says in our heads, like potentially go deeper. That part of the story is something that could be explored in the future. So something that's kind of a work in progress like that, you leave it open enough to get worked on and made better. Watts, if you want to, I could fully describe the bottom episode where we see Jod as a kid, what happened to him and why. And Ford says the challenge though was as fascinating as Jod is, we always want to keep it from the kid's perspective. The kids are like, I don't understand this guy. Never been out in the galaxy, messing with his damaged him. So I don't think we could have done a flashback in this season. So I think again, telling the kid story, this makes sense why they did not go this way, Pete.
Yeah, I agree. I really I think you said it all, especially that article.
Nick Fraietta, anything you want to chime in here with the decision not to give us the actual flashback?
I like it. We mentioned more of a mystery. We said the same thing with the supervisor last week. Like having some sort of mystery was good. I like not having the flashback. It creates more mystery. It creates more of a interpretation. You can interpret it the way you want, kind of thing. And I really like that.
Yeah, and a little bit of a fun story on Twitter here. Hey, you guys ever see the show Quantico?
Nope.
Yeah, well, it turns out one of the actresses from that show, Yasmin Al Masri, posted on Instagram that she apparently was cast and did film scenes as the Jedi who found Jod and trained Jod in some flashback. And it says that she played Jedi for one scene in Skeleton Crew, and she was excited to be the first Arab female Jedi in Star Wars. And her scene got cut, so it's safe to say she was playing the Jedi who found Jod and gets killed in Order 66. So that is out there somewhere, but they chose not to include it.
Interesting.
Nick D, any reaction to that or?
I mean, I guess it would have been nice to have like, the first Arabic, actor in Star Wars. That would have been cool to have. I if it didn't make sense for the story ultimately, then I guess, that's the bottom line. And I maybe we'll see later on, we'll see the scenes and it got cut and we can determine better then. But for the final product that came out, I think it was good to not include a flashback scene.
Yeah, I think I worked here. And Pete, I know the actors I've seen the show, like she's a good actress and makes sense that like if they wanted to go that direction, she's somebody they would go to. But like the producers had it right. It's like you could have done this, but it kind of in the story where we're following the four of the four kids, it kind of takes us out of it to go back and see Jod's backstory. The line's all we need.
Yeah, and flashbacks have not really done well in Disney Star Wars as of late, so they probably were treading very carefully when it came to that. I'm sure the scene wasn't bad. Like, I'm sure it wasn't like, oh, this scene is crap, we can't use it. I just think they probably made an executive decision to say, we've been trying the flashback thing in pretty much every single show we've been putting out there. Let's not. Let's just let it breathe. Let's keep it as, let's keep it in our back pocket. Maybe they revisit something like that in a season two, which we can discuss in a little bit. But it was probably just a decision by the producers to say, let's just keep it simple. Let's keep it in the timeline.
Yeah, Nick, I wouldn't be surprised, Nick Frey, like if this was one of the things that like got trimmed when they went back and at last year and kind of reshot some stuff. If this was one of the casualties of the decision to redo the story a little bit.
Could have been. I don't know. Couldn't tell you. We'll probably never know.
All right. Anything else on Jod before we go to the planet at Atten?
No.
All right. We go to at Atten here, which is a fun planet. We get enough, basically one of the old Republic mints that's hidden from the galaxy. As I theorized the end of episode 7, I said that this is going to be opened up to the Star Wars universe, and at Atten is basically now the barrier's gone. They are greeted by New Republic people, and now they are in the regular galaxy. They're going to learn a lot about what happened there all the hundreds of years that they were isolated here. I think, Pete, this is a fascinating idea to have these people who basically been theoretically frozen in carbon, have no idea what's happening in the outside universe, having them be thrown into the general Star Wars situation of we've had a whole war, the Jedi are gone, there's a couple left, we had an empire's gone, there's stormtroopers. Like I remember you learn all that experience, that culture shock. I think is a fun story element for different aspects to play with, even if it's not this show.
Yeah, I mean, I think the dynamics of Ad Atten were phenomenal. I mean, Nick would say it every week, I want to know about this planet. You want to know more. I was a little disappointed that we didn't really get like a one or two liner from the supervisor as to why Ad Atten is the way it is, unless I missed it. I could be 100% wrong. Um, I just wish we had a little bit, just like I said, a one or two liner by someone to be like, oh yeah, we've been feeding the New Republic money ever since, and this is why we're like, just something, just a little bit of something for validity as to why. Now, granted, I know it's because they have pretty much unlimited money. I understand that aspect of it, but giving the world a little bit more characterization other than we're just loaded.
Yeah. We're just rich. That's the plan.
Right. So that's that. Hopefully, if we get a season 2, that's something they discuss a little bit further. Not necessarily needed for the season. I'm not saying the season was bad because of it. Just feel like it was a little underwhelming to the end when it came to the importance of what that planet stood for.
Nick Frey, what do you think about what we learned about Atten here and like the whole where we left it at the end of the show?
I mean, you know how I feel about it. I always wanted to know more, but my main thing is that I started thinking about was we just kind of glanced over this last week. The supervisor was a droid, right?
Yep.
Someone had to make the droid.
Yeah.
Didn't think of that.
Yeah. We don't know who did that.
We don't know who did that. Maybe the someone who did that was our long lost pirate. Who knows?
Could be.
That could be a season 2 theory or something. Who knows? It's an interesting thought. I thought about that maybe a day after we recorded last time. I think that's pretty important because like they're willingly taking orders from this droid, but someone had to have made the droid. I think it may have been a situation where the person who made the droid was a respected individual who they were taking orders from, and he was like, "You now take orders from this person."
Yeah, it's like I'm
He's in the
leaving.
droid.
He's in charge.
Yeah, and whether that person left or had passed away over time, we don't know. But hopefully, we find out more about that.
Yeah, Nick D. This is like gonna be like a very deep like lore pull from like a different TV show, but like this sort of reminds me of the pilot premise of like Star Trek Voyager, where like we have there's a species of like random like childlike aliens who are like living on a planet by themselves, being taken care of by like a sentient alien like caretaker, he's called. And like the idea is basically, oh, like I screw up their planet. I feel responsibility to take care of these people, and then he knows he's dying, so he's basically pulling people from all over the galaxy to try and succeed him. So I wonder if this is sort of something where there's some sort of like caretaker responsible for this planet. Then he had to move on and said, I'm leaving the droid here, make sure these people are sustaining for when I'm not here.
Yeah, and there's also the question too of like all the other planets because they all had the same layout, right? They all had the same. I mean, like in the finale, Neil was able to be like, "I know where that gun thing is because I was on another planet similar." So like, there's that still unanswered question of like the bigger picture, like why, what were all these planets? Why were they all similar? Why do they have the same structure? Were droids in charge of those too? Like, there's still a lot of questions that they didn't answer, which I mean, I guess that's where maybe the bigger world now takes over and we'll have an answer to that. But yeah.
Yeah, P, I think it's interesting because like they gave you enough to keep you interested and to move the story forward here, but like I don't think they it went too far where they had to bore you with like, oh, like here's the history of space Epcot and why this model society didn't work. They gave you like hints, but like they didn't require you to explain everything to you.
No, I mean, and I think it worked organically. As we talk about all different plants, and Nick D, thank you so much for bringing it back up again because I totally forgot. I was my sights run at, and if this wasn't a family show, I feel like we could have turned this into a Star Wars psychological thriller. Right? There's all these different planets that are pretty much exactly the same. What if these people met? What if these, and just kind of made this something that Star Wars has never ventured into before? Because there's so many, anomalies. There's so many, maybe not anomalies, that's the wrong word, but like so many coincidences and so many like equals and so many duplicates. It could have been. I feel like you could do a lot with it, but like you said, the mystery is there. They didn't have to bore us with the history. Um, I agree with Nick D. There's so much out there though to discover. I do wish there was a little bit more, but for 8 episodes, it's hard to do what you did and then also put all that backstory in it as well. Probably something for a season two.
Nick D, on the planet, here's something I mentioned to these guys like a couple weeks ago. Like you appreciate this because you're a Lost guy. Like, what if this was the Star Wars versus the Dharma Initiative, where each planet had its own sort of experiment going on?
But I mean, I think I kind of had a theory kind of like that too, but I equated it more to the Fallout vaults. But yeah, like I wonder if there's like a bigger thing going on. But it actually makes sense too. I just thought about like this show is from the perspective of the kids, right? So like that's why you don't see Jod's backstory really because it's from the perspective of the kids. So like this planet from the perspective of the kids, they don't know anything other than this. So we only know as much as they do right now, which makes sense.
Yeah, the little bits we learn from them is like when they run into Akring, what they learn from Kim. Like we don't get like what the parents actually know or what the supervisor knew. We don't get that information.
Yeah, and that makes sense because the whole show is from the kids' perspective. So why would we know more than the kids?
Yeah, we're along for the ride with them here, and I think the fascinating thing here, Nick Fraietta, to wrap up the discussion, is sort of like that's something that the showrunners mentioned here in the articles to throw out here too. Is like this planet, again, you've been isolated from the whole galaxy for hundreds of years, and now they're thrown into this chaos of what the galaxy's become after the Galactic Civil War. So, and there's planets they think exist don't exist anymore. So, like that's going to be a crazy experience for them to adapt to.
Yeah, someone's gonna say, "Hey, now that we can finally travel, let's go see what Alderaa's all about."
And you're like, no,
Yeah, they're gonna not be able to go there.
yeah.
But yeah, good point. Interested. I don't know. We're gonna have to talk about the future of this show, and we're gonna in a few minutes, and that's really gonna be, I think, the most important discussion we have today. But if they do something else here, like more with these characters, maybe exploring the galaxy, catching up to speed would be something that'd probably be a between seasons thing, but would be interesting to see, at least from my perspective. I'd love to see that.
So Pete, Wibb's Field Trip to the Jedi Temple is definitely out too.
The say that again.
Wibb's Field Trip to the Coruscant Jedi Temple is also out of the question
And
here.
Jeddah.
Yeah, I mean, I would assume so.
Let's go to Jeddah City. Not happening.
No, that's not happening here. You can't really do much on Scarif either.
To be fair, I don't think Scarif was a place they would ever gone beforehand.
It's a beach planet.
I don't. Yeah, that's a good point, and I don't know what was going on. I just have to look up what was going on there prior to the Empire. Did the Republic use it as a base, or was it just a vacation area prior? I'm gonna look into that.
Yeah, we'll look into that here. And I think obviously this good point, good discussion point here that Scott touched on here is this is a comparison here, I think, between Acolyte and Skeletor, the last two live action shows here. And Pete, you would say fairly that like we were much higher in Acolyte going into it than Skeleton Crew.
Yeah, I think the roles were reversed. I think the hype for Acolyte um, was underwhelming when it got to it, but then the lack of hype for Skeleton Crew, we were like, wow, where was this with Acolyte, right? I always say if you switch the writer to the Acolyte to use the Skeleton Crew's writer, we may have had a more successful show. But yeah, definitely different.
Yeah, different here. I think my theory on this, Nick Fraietta, is that like what Acolyte got wrong, and you talk about this when we talk about the Acolyte being canceled, is this whole idea that Leslie Headland had this whole grand vision of I'm telling a story over 5 seasons. I'm gonna space out all my fun stuff. Like initially, the Darth Shark reveal of Chimere was not gonna be in season one. Then we spaced a lot of time getting 2 episodes doing the same flashback from different perspectives, and we basically traded a lot of ground, did a lot of nothing for most of the show. Whereas this show, they're like, we're fine if we're one season. We're gonna give you the entire story we want, and if we want to do more, we'll leave you little breadcrumbs. But we gave you our mission statement here. If you like it, great. If not, oh well. I think that was a big difference between these two shows.
It's almost like shows will show a pilot, not to us, to like a network, and then network will say yes or no. And I feel like it should kind of be that way with, now, of course, not the same, but a little similar. Like a season is almost like your audience's way of a pilot. Like you show us the first season, we're gonna let you know what we think, and then you go from there if you're gonna make more, as compared to you just start throwing one season out. And so, like you said with the Acolyte, we have 5 ideas or 5 seasons lined up, planned, and we're going to show you one at a time. People may not respond well. If you use that first season as like a way to gauge the audience's interest level, what were they interested in? What were they not interested in? How can we improve on that? And if there's a future season, that's how you can build the show better. Give them a complete story, take their feedback, constructively and build something out of it rather than just assuming there'll be more.
Yeah, and Nick D, I think it's kind of like imagine like if this show like John doesn't show up until about like John's used very sparingly the first few episodes, and at the end you went, oh, I wish we had more John. I think like that's sort of like if imagine if Acolyte had Chimere like more heavily involved the whole way through and knowing who he is, then you would have a much better experience.
Yeah, I think the show, I think it's just simply was just, I think it was just written better and it was directed better. I think, like because like I didn't hate the story of Acolyte. It just kind of like, it just, it just was hard to watch sometimes. And then,
I mean, sorry to interrupt you. If you just say to somebody what the Acolyte is about and don't tell them anything else, and you're like, it's these Sith that are not really Sith, but dark side Force users in the shadows, and one of them is being trained by Darth Plagueis, and like you would this is the greatest show ever
yeah,
if you
yeah,
just heard that part of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but then you get all the other nonsense with, like the twins subplot, the endless flashbacks to what happened on their planet, and like the random shenanigans that the Jedi are up to here. Like there's like a lot of extra nonsense thrown in there.
yeah. I think it also suffered a little bit too. What's that thing that Disney uses, the volume, that big
Yeah.
thing I think it suffered a little bit from using that too much because sometimes there would be like scenes where like in Acolyte they'd be walking through the woods and like they would walk into frame, stop, have a conversation, then walk out of frame, and like it just took you out of it. Even though like the visuals look great and the lighting looks great, it just like it felt too small at times.
Funny thing is like they did not use that much. They were doing a lot of on location shooting for that show.
Well, then maybe it's just bad directing. Then I don't know, but
And director's
yeah,
possibility with with that show.
yeah, and it just yeah, it's funny because going into this, when you guys have your list of like here's all the shows coming out, like Skeleton Crew was the one I was just like, I'm not, I don't even know if I'm gonna watch that one, and now I'm like, that's been the best one so far.
Yeah. Hold that thought. Remember that for the end of the podcast.
Okay.
Yeah, so I hope I have time. I meant to do this, and I hope I have time to finish before we're done. I was gonna make one of those, you can make your own tier list.
Yeah.
I was gonna do one for the shows, live action and animated, that have come out since Disney Plus's release.
Yeah.
And I'm working on it like on the back right now, but it's like hard because I have to obviously pay attention to what we're talking about. So I might not finish, but if I do finish, I would love to share it by the end.
P, anything you want to add on this conversation, what the Acolyte got wrong, where the Skeleton Crew got right?
I I have to agree with Nick Fraietta because they made the show thinking they'd be 5 seasons. It's not how to do it. I agree wholeheartedly. It's not how you do it. I mean, one show I'll just say because of recency bias is Squid Game.
Yeah.
I won't get into it because I know season 2 just came out. Season 3 is coming out later this year. That is a great show to show you you can stay on one path each season. And a lot of great shows do that. You stay on one path each season, then each season may unlock stuff that you remember from watching in season 1. Like The Acolyte didn't have to do both flashbacks in the same season. They could have just went linear, did the one flashback to understand why we're at the situation, and then maybe 2 or 3 seasons later, if it does work out, do the flashback from the other side to then show a flip or whatever. So I just think this whole I'm gonna do this because we're gonna have 5 seasons to do it. It just doesn't make it it doesn't give it a great enough chance.
Yeah, I think also Stranger Things kind of like that too, where they give you one great season to
Right.
unlock things.
Yeah, Stranger Things. I mean, don't get me wrong. At the end of season 1, they do give you a little something that like something more is happening, but it's super open ended. That if it doesn't, like, if they just stopped at season 1, it would still be a good show. You wouldn't be like, well, what happened? Like, you would just be like, you would just take it for what it was, right? Yeah, Stranger Things is another one as well.
Yeah, because I mean, season one, Nick D basically ends the place. You could say if it don't contain like, oh, like Will has PTSD basically, and like this is sort of like a manifestation of his PTSD from his experience. Whereas like season two basically unlocked, oh, this is what's actually happening with Will.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, obviously when you're writing a show, you have to think about like plots later on down the line that maybe you want to reveal and things, but you can't rely on that.
Yeah,
And Skeleton Crew didn't rely on that.
Acolyte did.
Acolyte did, yeah.
Yeah, and now Leslie Headland said I had all these things here, and Nick, I will never forget Nick Friday. The whole Chimera was not going to be in season one, that reveal, until we decided to add it in. That was like, what?
And that would be something, huh?
Yeah. Like,
That'd be,
what are
one- that'd be one hell of a choice. But they
what are
did
you
not
getting?
do that.
What are you getting in season one if you don't give us that?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like, we talked about Rebel Moon. They did the same thing, making it two movies instead of one. And I think it's more than that. I think they were assuming it'd be even more.
Well, Realm was also a whole other pile of shit we don't need to get back into.
Yeah, I know. But it was like they weren't even trying to make one movie there. They were trying to make multiple. And it's too much.
They wanted a franchise.
Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of potential franchises here, there is potential here for a second season, and I'm gonna go back to the EW article one more time with the showrunners here, and they had here a couple of notes I'll share on the YouTube version here. So this is in the it says here, ask the writers, do you have season two outlines, do you have scripts, or is it just all in your heads? And they says Watt says we have ideas in our heads for sure. We need to find out what everyone else thinks, but we always had an idea of where this could go even before we made the first season. Lots of potential out there, and hope everyone sees that. And the other thing here is basically there's a couple of stuff with the child actors about how like, oh, like we would, age them up a little bit. We wouldn't just assume that 6 months pass here. And you did say the audience has been growing, so that's good for us. But do you think we need a season two, guys?
Need? No. I would love one though.
Yeah. I would love a season two. I don't think we
Love a season two. I think that there is a lot more to tell, but you don't have to tell any of this stuff. I think that's why it's leaded with you don't need a season two. I think all of the stories that they told in this, all of the plot lines, everything's pretty much closed up. There are some things they somewhat left open-ended on purpose they could revisit, but they really don't have to. I would like it because I enjoyed the show and I want more of it selfishly, but I think it's completely fine original idea if they leave it alone and leave it at one season.
Yeah, P. I feel like to me, it's like if the writers have a good idea and they can get Disney Plus on board for it, great. But like this is also the way they left it is like we have a fine season, we can have a good memory of this, and like if you wanted to, explore these characters in a different format, whether it's they show up in one of the upcoming movies, maybe Mandalorian stops by there, like maybe something happens in a different show, like I could see, maybe like we visit Atten for an episode or something and continue the story that way.
I can see that for sure. I'm okay with that. I think this is one of those shows that should be a slow burn. If they do try to do a season two, it should not be for a few years. I think you need to let it gain popularity. You need to let it sit and then come back with it, get the excitement up again for it, maybe market it a little bit, get people to watch season one before season two. I just don't want to see something that was this good rushed to get a season two out. Almost like what happened with Mandalorian, where season three had to come out, and it was just, to me, compare the first two seasons, it was just not good. So if they're gonna do it, take some time, make sure you're doing it correctly. If you got to reshoot, if you got to make sure the plan is good, I'm all for a season two. If not, just let Ad be another planet that, like Mando or Ahsoka or someone can visit.
To be fair to the Mandalorian stuff, I feel like there was also like a lot of studio meddling in that sort of influenced where they were going to go with the story.
Sure. Yeah, no, look, I'm not saying that that was all based upon rushing it out or anything like that, but they they need to take these shows seriously moving forward because their products just have not been the greatest. Have they been bad? No. I'm the first person to say Acolyte. I liked Acolyte. There was just some gripes about it that they could have done a little bit better. But they need to follow a format that works, and Skeleton Crew's format worked. Regardless of what the content was, the format of getting it out and writing a story and all that kind of stuff, all those ground rules, keep with that for all the Disney shows moving forward.
Yeah, and I think also a fascinating potential discussion for us at some point, Pete. I mean, Nick, like Fraietta, the universe where like Disney executives don't step in and force them to reunite Mando and Grogu in the Book of Boba Fett. I think it's a fun discussion to have a different day.
Yeah, I guess we can talk about our TikTok friend.
Well, we'll get to TikTok friend in a minute, but because I have a spot for TikTok friend.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, I have him. I know exactly where I'm going to him, but I do think Nick D, before we wrap this point up here, any thoughts on if you want a season two of this show?
Yeah, I don't think it's needed. I think it's cool that I think didn't they say was it in that article or maybe I heard it somewhere else that they have a plan for like obviously they're kids, so they're gonna grow up, they're gonna hit puberty, they're gonna change. He has like they have plans for the development time and how like realistically if the show comes out in 5 years, the story will be written with them as if they're 17, 18 years old, not as, 12-year-olds. I think he said something like that. Um, it'd be cool. I think I would almost prefer to have like characters from this world in other things now.
Yeah.
Like if Jod makes an appearance somewhere, that'd be cool. If like 20 years later Wim's like a pilot for the New Republic or something, you know what I mean? Like it'd be cool to have that. I don't think it needs a second season, but I would like it because it was good, but I don't think it needs it.
I'm firmly in the camp of if the writers have a good idea and they get to go ahead and do it. Don't just tell them make a second season when they don't really have anything planned.
Yeah, sure.
All right, so let's get into some fun stuff here to wrap the episode here. As we mentioned here, Nick Frey brought up the character draft before, but as you can guess, Nick D, if you've watched the season with us here, this was a lose-lose proposition here because we, for the second show ever, we went 0 for the character draft because nobody had the foresight to pick the twins from Book of Boba Fett.
Mm. I would say by default give it to Pete because I was on Team Pete, but he was really talking a lot of smack about the Power Rangers and making fun of Goldar. So now I'm officially off Team Pete's bandwagon. So
Yeah, I feel like if anybody would get credit for me, it's like this thing would probably be me because at least Hondo should mean Hondo was available in the events of this series.
What
And Tatum,
like
and
what
Tatum.
Hondo's ship was there, right? That was the
And
thing.
that's the only thing, because like we saw X-Wings, not Carson Tatum, but we saw Hondo ship, no Hondo. That's the closest we got in this thing.
And there were only what, one or two characters that would have qualified.
Yeah, it was only I think the twins from Book of Boba Fett, and I forget who the like they really it was that one twin was the only one who were qualified.
I think there was one more. I have to look. I think there was one more who technically would have counted.
I'll get to that when we get to the. I think maybe like if I'm, I think I know what you're talking about. Maybe think it was one of the pilots from the.
Oh, it was. It was one of the pilots at the end. He was in The Force Awakens.
It was in the sequel trilogy.
Yeah, he was in the Force. He's the one who goes direct hit, but no damage. I don't
Yeah,
know his name though.
yeah. I don't know his name, but he is there. So we'll get into our trackers here. The Hondo tracker did not update 19 episode 19 Hondos overall here, but you know they were actually asked about Hondo, the showrunners.
And
I will get into this here because somebody asked them like if we have season two, could Hondo be the main villain? So that would be an interesting discussion point. So I'm just trying to get this page to load real quick. So bear with me. But I would you because I think that would be an interesting spot
let me
where I feel like this kind of show the pirates worked as villains.
let me just say this. If you swap Jod out for Hondo, isn't that like a 1-for-1? Just when it comes to personality.
They're similar.
Right, like just imagine it. Let's say just say you take Jod out of that role, that character, and you just put
Hondo in.
Hondo in. Granted, the lightsaber stuff wouldn't work out, but you cut and paste Hondo in there. I feel like it's a 1-for-1.
Kind of works. It's kind of similar to what he did to Ezra and Rebels.
Right. I mean, there's look, it's not okay. 1-for-1 is probably a little bit steep, but you know what I'm trying to say.
It has similarities.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I'll go to
But I think it does work if you have him as a second season. Not even as the villain, just to be in general. More so, because yeah, I heard Severance came back on Apple TV Plus, but
yeah this annoying ad the TV line thing. So
yeah, but I heard good things. So
yeah, I heard rave reviews about Severance as well. But
yeah, but back to Hondo, it works because the first season was centered around the children, and the pirates were viewed as bad guys. Now, of course, they can just make them a bad guy, but you could explore, if you have a season two, more pirates. Maybe some pirates who aren't bad guys. Maybe some pirates who just like to have a good time. And maybe that's how you can introduce Hondo, because I think they've kind of painted the picture at this point in the galaxy, or at this point in the timeline, that Hondo is a good guy,
yeah.
especially with his appearance. I know this is many years later. His appearance at Galaxy's Edge is almost 25 years later in the timeline, but he's working with the New Republic.
Yeah, so anyway, Skeleton Crew co-creator Christopher Ford told T-Line ahead of the season, no, we don't have any Hondo. Honestly, we love Hondo. There wasn't a real part in our story that offered a good enough role for him. Like, if you were trying to cast in this, he'd be like, this part is not big enough for Hondo. So it's not to say that the Skeleton Crew couldn't ever feature the Illustrated Buccaneer. As Ford said, we'd love to keep doing this and keep exploring the whole pirate side of the galaxy and build up to that. So the story was too small for Hondo, allegedly.
Okay.
I think it makes sense. Like realistically, if Hondo just showed up as a cameo, which I think they're trying to kind of get away from the random cameos
Yep.
that have importance, of course, like the hut, whatever, just a little fun thing that doesn't really hurt anyone. I think they're trying to get away with the important cameos that like, who's that? I need to go look it up and watch 6 seasons of a show to understand who that is. And they're trying to get rid of that. So if he were to show up, that'd be the only thing that would make sense. Where else do you think it could have possibly fit? Could he have been one of the pirates? I don't think so, because you're trying to paint him as not a villain, I would assume. I know the article is completely the opposite. They're saying that he would be the main villain if there was a season two, or it could be. But I feel like if you had to show him at this point in the timeline, he's not going to be a villain. People who know him from Galaxy's Edge do not know him as a villain. I don't think it works if you make him like part of Brutus's crew, for example. And if you have him be a random swashbuckling pirate on where were they at the beginning? The random spaceport? I don't know if I had a name.
Fort Morgo.
Fort Morgo, then it's kind of underselling Hondo.
Yeah.
So I kind of agree. There really wasn't a spot for him.
I think the only spot that could have been is if you replaced him, if you replaced Bruce with him, whereas he sort of takes over and mutinies against Jod, but then it doesn't really work if your whole plan is Jod's gonna kill him, and we know Hondo is not dead at this point in the future.
Maybe he's on the port, or maybe he's on the spa planet, which I don't really think works, spa planet for him. But like, that's really about it. I don't see anything else that's even possible.
Yep. So next tracker here, the planets. He visited three planets, Pete. We went to Atatin, Akron, and Lanupa. So a little low for what we've been used to some of these shows.
It works. It's fine. I mean, I'm not complaining about the uh the scene, the where they go, the
Yeah.
locations.
But see, I'm complaining because I run the sports book here at Sky Guys Podcast, and our over under I think was at 6.5, and we got a ton of money on the under, and we had to pay a lot.
Yeah, this was a big liability for the book.
Yes, the going under was a huge liability for the book, so we're a little upset about that.
Yeah. Classic lines, Nick D. We had four. We had a couple of wizard references, and we had the "You Are No Jedi" call out to Ahsoka from Clone Wars in Episode 8. So four classic lines this season.
Yeah, and I think classic lines, planets visited, like I think they had just as many as the story needed. They didn't it didn't require any more than that. It wasn't trying to do too much. And good. That's what I like.
All right, now we get to the cameos. We had three in the season because I kind of taken the circus holograms and the Star Wars Hospital off the board here. It's going to be the battle droid, one of the twins, and that pilot from the finale. And now Nick F. This is where we're going back to our pal on the TikTok. So I did pull that reel back up, so I'm going to share it here at the audience here. This is from our preseason when we talk about characters in the Mandoverse. This guy, Charles Conyers, commented here. He said, "Not correct. No Mando appearance. No connected material as far as other series or movies see concerned." Then we replied, "Not correct. You've seen the season already, LOL." And he says, "My son plays Wim, so yes, I read the scripts. I've been to set. I met the creators, the directors, seen her the show for the last 2 years. So yeah, I know." And then I've done some more homework here on this. We went ahead and looked at, I followed his TikTok back here. This is the guy. We do have clips here of, I believe, Ravi Kavik Conyers like opening Christmas presents and building gingerbread houses. And then you also see here that he is a big Hollywood guy. So it appears that this guy, at minimum, may have violated an NDA.
How is he allowed to just say that?
He's not. He's
We
not.
have we have made Star Wars podcast history. I challenge any other Star Wars podcast to come to us and tell us that someone involved in the show or someone related to someone involved in the show had to break an NDA to comment on their post.
Yeah.
Making history here.
You guys got to
I
get him
guess
on the
podcast.
show. Get him on the show.
Yeah, well, we have to talk to our legal guy, Max Roberts, here and see if this we're getting any issues here with his NDA. Be responsible if he starts.
I would imagine if he came on, he would never come on the show, as there would just be even more of a liability to himself.
Yeah, so it appears that this guy is who he says he is.
I mean, I guess I still either don't. I believe that who he is, who he is. I think that's clear.
Yeah.
I think he is who he says he is. I believe that. What I don't believe is him saying what he said. I actually don't believe it.
Yeah, well, I mean, technically the way he worded it didn't spoil the storyline anyway. He just basically told us, "Oh, there's nothing important to connect out the shows."
Can you see his comment history? Does he just going on every Star Wars podcast?
Yeah,
And
about
Can
to
you look
say,
at comment
you're not that
histories?
special.
is it like Reddit? Can you see comment histories or no?
Oh, I don't know. I doubt it.
I don't think so on TikTok.
Ah,
I would imagine you could see your
Your own history.
own. I don't even know, but I only.
It could be one of those things where like the NDA says you cannot speak about what's being done on set, but in the NDA it doesn't say you can't say what wasn't done on the set, kind of a thing. You know what I'm saying? Like maybe
Yeah,
he kind of spun it that way, so he's not actually breaking an NDA if this is for real.
Yeah, because I mean, he didn't actually tell us anything actually happened in the season. He just said what didn't happen.
legal gray area, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, he's been around the Hollywood game enough, this guy. I'm sure he knows what he can say and what he can't say.
That's so funny. I like watching this whole thing unfold from his first comment to now. This is hilarious.
Yeah. All right, so let's go back forward here. Nick Fraietta, Pete, 10 named pirates this season. We got Captain Salis, Captain Silvo, Brutus, Vane, Gunter, Denja, Prenick, Takranad, Glurb, Kami, Hona, and Pack. So 10 pirates.
Yeah, that's awesome. Nick, what was the over under?
I don't have that one in front of me.
Oh, All right.
But
Well,
I think it was around there.
all right. So we were good.
All right. Next up here, Nick D. We had 10 named children here. We had Wim, Runa, Neil, Fern, Dolim, KB, Tulo, and Jobo, who are Neil's siblings, Jorko, and Hana, Pete's favorite character.
Mm. Yeah, that's I actually didn't realize there were that many kids that were named on it too. But yeah, I know Hana's everybody's favorite, so that's good.
Yeah. I also feel like here, in terms of this situation, you're like, this track stopped hitting up like episode 4. So Nick D broke the kid tracker.
Oh, well, sorry.
Which one were you were on for the one where we met the girl?
We
Matt,
met Hana, yeah.
Matt Hana and Nick D's episode.
Yeah.
We had one meme this season. Jod's like from episode 4. You know what? Just shoot me became a meme on the internet like right after it aired. So that is the only meme that produced the season. Surprised we didn't get a Neil one.
I
I
think the
think
job was
I
great.
think Neil didn't really have any like memeable moments, right? I think everybody just loved Neil.
Yeah, that was fun, and I do think that one worked. And last but not least, Nick F. We had Jod's aliases. We had 6 of them over the course of the season. We had Captain Silvo, Crimson Jack, Dash Zendon, Jodwick Zand, Professor Umiam Gorlox, and the Republic Emissary. So 6 different aliases for Jod.
That's pretty good.
Yeah,
Do you guys think we actually learned his real name? Do you think any of those are his real name?
I think Jod's his real name.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be possible, but I actually don't think so.
I think Jod's actually his real name. I think all the other ones just things he's telling people. Listen, he doesn't. Cause I don't think he is worried about these 4 children. So he's kind of let his guard down with them.
Yeah.
All right. Next up here, we'll look back at the MVP board for the season, and this is over the course of the entire show. So our MVP of the season was Jod, aka Captain Silvo, aka Crimson Jack, aka Dash Zenton, aka Jadwick Sand, aka Professor Umion Gorlock, aka Republic Emissary. He had +9 for the season. Neil Longbottom is christened by Pete +5. Fern and KB tied for third at +4, and then the writers +1. So 5 characters hogged the positive points this show.
You
And
know,
then,
I think every time you guys have one of these, there's always that one character that starts off poor and then finishes strong that gets, buried. And I think that character is Wim on this board. I think Wim, started off so poor that he's in the negative, but I think, you know, he probably could be in the positive.
yeah,
Yep, agreed completely.
yeah. So the negatives here, Pete, we did put the Star Wars Carousel of Progress on the board here, aka the supervisor. Hana, Wim, Wendell picked up a point last week as well, and Vane from me last week, -1s. -2s are security droids and the spa guards. Nick Fraietta. We're not big fans of security on these shows. They tend to do it very bad at their jobs.
No, but to be honest, if they didn't do a bad job, a lot of these shows just couldn't happen, possibly, because they would just end there and there. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Plot armor, really?
Sure. SM33 and Hana's dad both at -3. And then the LV of the season is Brutus at -7, who is a very terrible pirate leader.
Yeah, I agree. I think how many times did he just do the complete wrong thing, which ultimately led to his death? So yeah,
Yeah.
LVP.
Yeah. I mean, Pete, there were so many ways for Brutus to avoid his fate, and he just completely blew all of them.
Yeah, I mean, I think it worked in the favor of the show. But you're right.
All right. Last but not least, here we'll go to the episode rankings here. We've been grading all the episodes of the course of the season here. So the positive here, all episodes are at least average or better, which is a big plus for this show for compared to where we were in Acolyte, where we got 3s and 2s at points.
Absolutely.
Let's go here. Put the board up here from the top. The finale, episode 8, The Real Good Guys, 9.33, the best episode of the season. Then episode 7, we're going to be in so much trouble, 8.88. Now, checking third, episode 5, got a lot to learn about pirates, 8.83. Fourth, episode 2, way past the barrier, 8.17. 5, episode 6, Zero Friends Again, 7.38. Sixth, episode 3, Various Astrogation Problem, 6.88. Seventh, Nick D's episode, Can't Say I Remember No at in episode 4, 6.75. And last but not least, the very first episode, this could be a real adventure, 6.5. So nothing below a 6.5 on this show, Nick F.
That's great. And episode one was the worst, which I still agree with.
Yeah.
Looking back at the show, I think that actually makes sense. I remember thinking to myself the first 20 minutes or so of episode one, I'm like, oh no, this sucks.
Yeah.
I hate this. And then it turned it around. I was like, oh, this is actually really good. And then two, I was like, well, that was really good. Okay, I'm good because they did one and two in the same night. And then yeah, things were good. And I don't even like episode four there.
Yeah.
I,
675.
I don't remember what I gave it, but I think I remember liking it. So there you go. Every other episode on the thing here I liked.
Yeah, I think most of these are above most of the Acolyte episodes.
Yeah.
P, any reaction to the board?
Honestly, I think the show as a whole was great. So to see that episode one being a 6.5 at the bottom just kind of speaks volumes. Um, that on average, these shows are really good. I mean, these episodes, excuse me.
Yeah, Nick D, any reaction to what we saw here with these episodes and some of these grades on here?
No, I think it actually makes sense because for the most part, if you look at your board, the episodes just get better. Like the number gets higher as you go on with the episodes. So that means the show just kept getting better and better as it went on, which I agree with. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to find real quick the Acolyte season one episode ranking just to comparison's sake here. And I'm gonna throw that one up here because I just pulled it up. And in terms of the situation here, like we have 5 episodes of Acolyte worse than the worst episode of Skeleton Crew.
But it
Wow.
makes sense too. And I think there is a little bit of in opposite ways here. I think that you have episode one and two fairly high on the Acolyte list here. They're the second and the third ranked episode. And I think that comes in with a way of we didn't know what to expect. Oh yeah, not bad. Whereas the opposite goes through is true for Skeleton Crew in that we didn't really know what to expect. So we kind of we all just give it a safe rating, is what I'm trying to say,
Yeah.
with one and two, because you really don't know. And then the rest of the show plays out, you're like, that's how it really was. So I actually was going to say that, like with episode one and two of Skeleton Crew, I bet you if you go back and rewatch, we would give them much higher ratings. And I think that always falls true with shows, especially in comedies. I know we're not really talking about a comedy here, but um, you ever watch like a long comedy series and you love the characters by the end, you get to know them, and you go back and you watch that first episode again. Like let's just use The Office, for example. When you watch the first episode of The Office for the first time, you don't know the characters that well, so they're not that funny to you. You don't get it. Then when you learn their humor and you go back and watch it again, you realize how funny the beginning was because you know the characters. So I feel like the same thing could, I know it's not a comedy, but the same thing can happen here where you go back and you now that you know Wim and Neil and Fern and KB and know their character traits and see the show again from the beginning, you may appreciate those episodes a lot more.
Yeah, I think that's for sure here. So it's a fun commentary here. I think that's it for us this week here. But the point Nick D'Alessio teased earlier in the show, we'll go back to here. Back in July of 2022, we had a very fun podcast. We ranked the projects of Star Wars most excited about here. So we've now seen pretty much everything on the list that's coming. So we're gonna revisit those rankings next week, Pete, and see how far how on the nail we were and what we were off about. So I think that's gonna be a fun look back and revisit some of these rankings.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how wrong I was. I'm usually not that great at the predicting part, as you guys know from character drafts. However, it's going to be a fun time, so definitely tune in. Definitely listen to that podcast because we're gonna be what the past 2 years of shows. We're gonna be reviewing to see how we did. So yeah, it's gonna be a fun one.
Plus, there's some wild stuff on there, Nick, that just either Nick Fraietta didn't happen or like got completely like retooled with something
Do
else.
you,
So
do you have this?
I have the list, but like I'll save it for the pod next week.
Okay. All right. That is a good tease.
And I will link the list. I'll link the episode next week's show notes so people can go back and listen to the original episode before they come back and want to check this out.
Yeah, that's going to be really interesting to see. Please do not share that information with us before. I would like a live reaction.
Yeah, it will not be shared live. And Nick D'Alessio, thanks again for coming on. I really appreciate it. If people want to follow you on social media and your Twitch stuff, how do they do that?
Yeah. Thanks for having me. So go to twitch.tv/the recovery room. We're actually starting a new series on Wednesday at the time of recording this. It's not Star Wars adjacent. We're gonna be playing Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. So there's connections there somewhat. So that's the next series we're doing.
Oh, Lucasfilm.
I can't do it. First person, you lose me. Can't play first person games.
Well, then come on over to Twitch.
The only one I've tried or that I've actually played that I've enjoyed was Cyberpunk.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can always go get the Indiana Jones like special foods, special like Mighty Labs IHOP. If you want to get in the mood that way.
I just don't understand why every game isn't first and third with an option to switch between the two, but that's just me.
All right, that's gonna be fun here. Pete, if you want to follow on social media, how can I do that?
At Conti29 on Twitter, CONSY29, AP Tyler 308, create the background I'm using on Reddit. And also make sure, like I mentioned earlier, the new YouTube, Star Wars, the Sky Guys podcast YouTube channel is live. So make sure you're subscribed to that. Season 2 of Andor will be exclusively on that channel.
Yep. And one more time, Nick, if you want to follow on social media, how can I do that?
Pretty much everywhere at Sky Guys Podcast, and you can email us at skyguyspod@gmail.com if you have any recommendations, you want to tell me how bad we are at this, whatever it may be.
You want your episode ideas, you can also send those in to us as well, because we're always open suggestions for future content to cover.
Yeah, whatever it may be.
Yep. So follow me on social media, mphillips331. It's MPHILIPS331. This is go over the Just on the Suffering podcast. I did a Jets off-season preview here. I was joined by John Butchko, the host of the Locked On Jets podcast. I immediately got Pete shaking his head.
It's the damn Jets, man. Crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of crazy stuff there. Plus, we have our picks for the conference championship games. Nick Fraietta, who's going to the Super Bowl?
I have no idea. I would think the Eagles would win in the NFC, and the AFC is who knows, toss up.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens there and make those picks on this podcast. We'll be back next week, revisiting our project rankings from 2022, see what age poorly, what goes in the freezing cold takes department. But until then, may the force be with you.